Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte. Focus question. Who was Napoleon and what were the effects of his rise to power? A famous leader. Napoleon Bonaparte was the leader of France in early 1800s. He was a very skilled general. He won almost every battle he fought. France's main enemy was Great Britain, but it had many others. Napoleon is remembered mostly because of the way he fought his enemies. Napoleon also changed France's government. Other nations have used Napoleon's ideas for their own governments. Napoleon made France a bigger nation, but he also hurt a lot of people and made enemies. The story of Napoleon's rise and fall is an important part of the history of Europe. A young man on the rise. Napoleon was born in 1769 in Corsica, a French island in the Mediterranean Sea. The French governor helped Napoleon's lower-class family become minor nobles. After grade school, Napoleon studied at two military schools in France. He graduated in 1785 as an army lieutenant. In 1789, the French Revolution broke out in France. The revolution ended the French monarchy, the rule by kings. Many French people were poor, and they hoped the revolution would improve their lives and make society more equal. In early 1793, the revolutionaries killed King Louis XVI. That led to a period called the Reign of Terror. During that time, Queen Marie Antoinette and many other powerful nobles were also killed. The Reign of Terror threw France into turmoil. There were no leaders at the top of government. Napoleon wanted to be an important leader in France, but for now, a group called the Directory took over. Napoleon fought British forces in a city in southern France. England and other European nations wanted to end the revolution and bring back the French monarchy. Napoleon drove out the British and recaptured the city. Because of this victory, the Directory promoted him to general. He was only 24 years old. In 1796, Napoleon married Josephine de Beauharnais, a widow with two children. Her first husband had been killed in the Reign of Terror. Achieving total power. Napoleon's victories continued. In 1796, he drove Australian and Italian armies out of Italy and claimed Italy for France. This made him more powerful. Napoleon wanted to invade England. However, British fleets always defeated French fleets, so the British Navy kept Napoleon from carrying out his plan. The losses at sea did not keep Napoleon from becoming the unchallenged ruler of France. So, in 1799, he overthrew the Directory and made himself a dictator. In 1804, he rose even higher. He made himself the Emperor of France. Running the country. Napoleon was a very successful military leader. He also worked to change France's government. Napoleon's most important change is called the Napoleonic Code. It organized France's laws instead of different systems all over France. He made laws the same for the whole empire. The code made it illegal for government officials to give jobs to whoever they wanted. They had to give jobs to people who could do them well. But the code also took rights away from women and it brought to black enslavement, which had gone away in France. Napoleon also changed the tax collection system. He picked the tax collectors and kept a close eye on the government's spending each year. This made it easier to put the money where Napoleon wanted it. As a result of his changes, Napoleon had enough money to keep his government and wars going. And with wars. Napoleon wanted to build an empire in Europe, but that led to wars with other European nations. The conflicts were known as the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon raised a huge army of more than 600,000 men for the wars. He called it the Great Army. France's enemies joined together in an effort to stop Napoleon, but he won almost every battle. With each victory, his empire grew. Napoleon tried to weaken England's economy. He ordered European nations not to trade with the British. To enforce that old order, French ships blocked the ports of European nations that were trading with England. In December 1805, Napoleon achieved a significant victory at the Battle of Austerlitz. It took place in an area that is now part of the Czech Republic. Napoleon's forces defeated a much larger army of Russians and Australians. In 1810, Napoleon added Holland and parts of what is now Germany to his empire. His empire was now at its more powerful. Napoleon wanted a son to take over after he died. He discovered Josephine and married Australian Duchess Mary Louise in 1811. She had a son, also named Napoleon. Napoleon's winning streak ends. In 1820, Napoleon made a big mistake when he decided to invade Russia. Russia had ignored Napoleon's order not to trade with England. In addition, Russia's Tsar Alexander I was about to join forces with the British. Napoleon wanted to prevent that, so in June 1820, he led more than 600,000 soldiers out into Russia. For a while, the Russian army refused to fight. They retreated, burning crops as they went, leaving nothing for the French soldiers to eat. The Russians finally fought the French on September 7th near the town of Borodino. 45,000 Russian soldiers died and so did 30,000 French soldiers. Napoleon chased the Russian army farther into Russia, but his army was getting smaller and weaker. Many soldiers were dying of hunger and disease. Napoleon reached Moscow in mid-September, only to find it nearly empty. The Russians burned parts of Moscow after the French arrived. In mid-October, with winter approaching, Napoleon took his army back to France. Russian forces attacked the French army many times as it withdrew. Only about 10,000 of Napoleon's soldiers made it back to France. Napoleon's time as the ruler of Europe soon came to an end. An alliance of his enemies surrounded Paris in 1840 and forced him to give up his throne. Napoleon was exiled to the Italian island of Elba. However, he escaped in early 1815 and raised a new army. Napoleon met his final defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in Belgium in June 1815. The Napoleonic Wars were finally over. France's monarchy was brought back. This time, Napoleon was exiled to a faraway place, the British island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean. He lived the rest of his life there and died in 1921. His body was later returned to France. Napoleon's lasting influence. Napoleon's ideas affected later governments in Europe. The ideas of the Napoleonic Code influenced many other nations, which used some ideas in their own legal systems. The code led to the modern age of Europe politics. Napoleon's influence also included his successes and failures at war. His battle tactics and campaign strategies have since been studied at many military schools and used in other ways. Someone once asked England's Duke of Wellington, the victor at Waterloo, who is thought was history's greatest general. His answer was Napoleon.